Hi, I'm back again with my 1986 Mac Plus, which I got recently. One thing I neglected to mention in my previous videos was that this year, 2024, is the 40th anniversary of the Macintosh. The original Mac came out in January 1984, and I actually owned one, and owned Mac Plus eventually, and used that on some of the first work I did on fonts. Back in 1984, there weren't any PostScript fonts or TrueType fonts or OpenType fonts for sure. All that stuff was just around the corner. There were PostScript fonts in the late 80s. TrueType came in 1991 and OpenType in the late 90s. But before all that, all you had were bitmap fonts, which were made of black and white pixels. One thing you notice right away, compared to other computers in the 80s, at the time the Mac came out, the fonts are proportional. In other words, the letters are not all the same width. And the other thing is that you could do different sizes, and you can put the text anywhere you want on the screen. I mean, even the menus had fonts in them, and it could overlap. This is because the Mac had a bitmap display, not a character-based display like other PCs at the time. One of the interesting things about this system was Apple shipped a printer, a dot matrix printer called the ImageWriter, which was exactly twice the resolution of the Mac. The Mac was 72 dpi, and the ImageWriter was 144 dpi. So if you had a font like New York here, where you had a 12-point size and a 24-point size, which is exactly double, when you would print in high-quality mode on the ImageWriter, it would use the larger size and make it smaller at high resolution when you printed it out. If you printed in under faster, it would print it exactly what you would see on the screen, 72 dpi, same size and everything. This is Apple's what you see is what you get, or WYSIWYG feature of the original Macintosh. The other interesting thing about the Mac was that you could have lots of fonts. You could have, I've got most of the original Mac fonts here, including a few later ones like Helvetica and Times. And you can install those in the system, on your system disk. You could also do multiple sizes. These were like the standard sizes, but you could do other sizes besides these with some other, MacWrite doesn't let you choose anything but these sizes, but yeah, it was possible. It also had different character styles, so you can apply bold, which just doubles the pixels and shifts them to the right. You could do italic, which just slants the characters by shifting the pixels over every 2 rows. You could do underline, outline, and shadow. You could even combine these various styles as much as you like, as much as your taste would allow anyway. So that's how fonts worked on the Mac. Now, if you wanted to make your own fonts, the only option in the first year was a really primitive, limited, crash-prone, hard-to-use program from Apple called Font Editor 2.0. This is a developer tool that only runs on the 128K or 512K Mac. It won't run on this Plus, so I won't demonstrate it here. It required the original ROMs, so it won't work on anything later than that. I used it for a little while. I did a whole video about it, which I'll put a link up here or in the description. But in May of 1985, AltSys, a company in Plano, Texas, founded by Jim Von Air, released a new program called FONTastic for $49.95. I bought a copy of it, This is my original copy here, the original user guide. This is not the original disc because I don't have the original disc because back then if you wanted an update you had to send your disc in to get the new updates on a different disc. This is like the last version that they made. I don't have any earlier discs. They also had a follow-up program called FONTastic Plus, which came out about 2 years later in 1987. And I did most of my, I did all of my bitmap fonts on the Mac using those two programs. AltSys also made Fontographer, which was the app that most people used to make PostScript and TrueType fonts in the 90s and into the 2000s. So compared to Font Editor 2.0, FONTastic was much more stable, had more features, it was easier to use, and you could just do more with it. AltSys is also the company that made Freehand, that was first distributed by Aldus in the 90s. AltSys was sold to Macromedia in 1995, and so they distributed Fontographer and Freehand for a while until Macromedia was bought by Adobe in 2005, and that was the end of that. So let's run FONTastic. So this is actually the last version of FONTastic, which came out in I think 1987. Let's see, what is it? Yeah, 87. So about a couple of years after the original version. Now when you start this up, you see an interface that's very similar to the Font DA mover, or the earlier font mover, which was a little utility that Apple shipped in the Macintosh before System 7 that let you move fonts around, or copy them from one disk to another or one file to another. And what we're looking at on the left here is all the fonts that are installed on this system. And you can see some familiar names here: Monaco, New York, Toronto, San Francisco. You notice it shows a preview at the bottom, just like the font mover. If we open one of these, one of the things that's different from the font mover or font DA mover is there is now an edit button and a new button. If we click the edit button, we can open this font, and you're presented with a 16 by 16 grid of characters. These are all the characters you could have in a font on the Mac back then. 255 because you couldn't edit a character 0, but it also did have a missing character symbol that you could edit, so I guess it's technically 256 characters possible. Most of these characters on the left are characters you can't type. You notice that this is showing the Chicago font, which is the system font, and you can see the command key symbol, the check mark, little diamond, and an apple logo, which are used actually in the menus here. So it actually isn't anywhere to type these, but a programmer could make them appear in menus and stuff like that. So this view of the character set shows what was the typical character set on a font back then. But if you want to see the actual New York font here, you can select Actual. And now it shows you all the characters that are in the New York font. The ones that don't exist are grayed out, and when you double click on one of these, it opens an edit window. The program is laid out with a file menu, which includes close and save, revert and quit, usual edit menu, a view menu. You can also display a grid here. A special command for adding a style to a character, so if you wanted to do like a bold version of this character, it just doubles up the pixels just like in the Mac Write. You can also do the other styles like italic, underline, outline, shadow. One interesting thing here is the outline effect. If you do that, apply that multiple times, you can get some kind of interesting effects. Now one thing you notice here is that there's only one level of undo, which is pretty typical back then. There is a way to get back to the original character if you do revert. So there are three other styles here: condense, expand, and invert. Condense and expand are kind of complementary. Condense removes a pixel from the right side of each character, so it makes each character 1 pixel narrower. And expand does the opposite. It adds a pixel to the right side of each character. So I'll do a little demo here. If we select, say, these characters here, close the A here, and do expand, these characters are more spaced out now. And if we do condense, it does the opposite. It makes them tighter. So the invert style, if, say we select all the characters in the font and do invert, it changes all the pixels from white to black and black to white. One thing you'll notice here is that the space character is not affected. That's because the space character doesn't actually have any pixels in it. It's only an advanced width. It just tells the cursor to move a certain number of pixels. There's no actually, you can't actually put pixels into the space character. This is true even on modern computers like Android, Mac, iOS, Windows. They all work the same way. If you're making fonts for those computers, you can't. It's not possible to put an image or anything into the space character. It just tells the computer to move the cursor horizontally a certain amount. But you notice there are also gaps between these lines. This is actually controlled with the leading setting here. So if we change the leading to 0, now the lines all butt up against each other. So let's see, I'm going to revert this. And there's a few other things, like you can go to the next or previous character. Another drawback to the original FONTastic is that neither the edit window nor the font window are resizable. So you can resize the sample window, which is nice, but it's kind of pointless because, like, say, if you made it horizontal like this, no matter where you put this window, it's going to be in the way. So it's kind of pointless. So about the only thing it's good for, being able to resize this, is to make it narrower over here so that you're able to see the whole window while you're working in the edit window. The default size here, when it's like that, it gets covered up, even if you put this all the way to the left. What I'm going to do now is basically create a new font using this program. Close this. Don't save the changes. Oops. So instead of choosing one of these, I'm going to create a new font. And this will be a 12-point proportional font. And you notice right away that there's a bunch of black boxes here. And this is because when you first make a font, there's no characters in the font. So it's actually displaying the missing character symbol. And we can actually change this if we want. I usually like to do like a box. You notice the pencil tool turns pixels on and off. And you can see right away that this is not looking quite right. That's because the origin is not set in the right place. Let's put that over here and then set the width to that. And now we see something a little bit more reasonable here. So the sample window here displays anything that you type. So if I type something like hello, it doesn't do anything because we haven't defined any characters yet. So we can't really see what we're doing here, so we really need to switch to the system view here so we can see what characters we're working with. I'm going to make a font that looks a bit like my Mostra Nuova font that I sell on my website. I think we'll start with the H. Let's see. Now it's a little hard to tell here where the baseline is. Okay, I guess I got it. And then the cap height, not the cap height, the accent. This controls the accent, so that's like the topmost part of the font. And then there's a descent here, which is the bottommost part, which is where you would put your descenders and stuff. So there's also a way to control the leading here. So let's see how many. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I might want to make that a little bit shorter. Let's just see how it goes. So let's see. So an H. Yeah, we'll make it 9 pixels tall. So Mostra has kind of narrow characters for characters like this. Now you notice over in the sample window here, you can already see that we're seeing something a little bit different here. So if we move the origin over and the width, the H looks pretty good there. So maybe let's do the letter O next. And you can actually type a letter to get to it, which is kind of convenient. I think I'm going to go back to the H and copy that. Let's see. I'm going to just copy the whole height here. Copy, then go to the capital O, and then paste it. Okay. So, now there's no circle tool here, so we're kind of stuck doing this by hand. And that's kind of a circle. Let's adjust our side bearings here. These left and right adjustments here, the origin and width, are also called side bearings by people who make fonts. So I think if I add some pixels here, yeah, that looks more like a circle. So now that we have the H and the O, I'm going to make a few other letters. So maybe do an E. We can make the E out of the H, so I'll select the H here, copy that, go to the E and do paste. And we'll just do that. And now we've got an E. Oops. All right. That looks a little too wide. I think I'll make that a little narrower. Okay. I'm going to type hello in all caps here so we can see what's happening. Let's see. Now we can make an L from this E. So let's select that and copy and go to the L and do paste. Ooh, that's not what I expected. Well, see what happened there is that the destination was a little bit bigger than the source, so it kind of stretched it out. But we can fix that. I think is that the right height? Okay. There, I think we have, yeah, there now we have hello. We can go in and do the lowercase. Let's start with I think we can use this L as a starting point for the lowercase l. So paste that in. Okay. And then we want to do the O next, so I'll type the O. So we start on the baseline. There. Let's see, set our side bearings. I've got an O. Not crazy about that. I think I'll try this. That's a little bit too square. Maybe you need to... I discovered when I used to make these fonts that sometimes you had to do little cheats like this to make it look right. So we can use this now as the basis for our E. There. Now we've got hello. So I'm not going to go through the whole making a whole font this way, but you kind of get the idea. I actually did this exercise earlier, so I can show you how it turned out. Let's see, close this. I'm not going to save it. Let's see, we want to edit that, not open it. And here you can see sort of a bitmap version of Mostra. Now one of the, this is a little tricky to do it in this program because it doesn't have any way to, like let's say you have a character like the B here and you want to make the P or a D or a Q, you would think you could just copy it and flip it horizontal or vertical, but those functions don't exist here. And there's no rotate command either. The marquee tool is really quite limited. So if, say, you wanted to select part of this character and move it to the left, you can't do it. You have to basically just redraw it. So now I think I'm going to show you FONTastic Plus. For this demo of FONTastic Plus, I'm actually going to switch to the multi-finder. FONTastic, the original program, doesn't work with multi-finder very well. The copy and paste basically doesn't work. So even though it kind of runs, that function doesn't work. You could use it with a program called Switcher that Apple shipped with System 5, which was a kind of a utility that was made by, programmed by Andy Hertzfeld, that kind of gave you multiple desktops if you had enough memory. If you had like 512K or more, you could have, say, Mac Paint running on one screen and then switch to a different screen and be doing like FONTastic or some other program. And then the advantage of that is that if you wanted to copy from one program to another, you didn't have to quit and launch each time you wanted to copy and paste something. Apple actually had a workaround for this with the original Mac, which was the scrapbook. So you could paste stuff here while you're in one program, and then when you quit and started another program, you could copy them and paste them from there. So it was kind of a clipboard utility. So in order to switch to the multi-finder, we need to do set startup and click on it right here. And then we need to restart. Multi-finder first shipped with System 6. In fact, it only shipped with System 6. By the time we got to System 7, it was always in multi-finder mode. And all the Mac operating systems after that worked like this. So this is a little bit more familiar. You have a icon in the upper right that lets you switch between programs. So now what we can do is, say, open this file in Mac Paint, and then click on this, and it switches us back to the Finder, and we can start FONTastic Plus. Now you notice right away that you can it's a little confusing because you can still see Mac Paint in the background. You can't hide it or anything. Anyway, you notice right away that instead of that sort of font DA mover interface, it lets you select a file. I've got a file here with my bitmap fonts in it that I made back then. And you'll notice that instead of just opening a font from within another file, we can actually see what's in this file. And there's actually quite a few fonts in here. You also notice this window is resizable. So if you look at these, all the fonts are listed. If you click on one, you get a preview. I made some fonts that look like the old Atari home computers, some other stuff. And you notice that there's these boldface entries here. These are actually font resources, F-O-N-D. The original Mac just had font resources, F-O-N-T, and there were only 256 possible font numbers available in that system because of the way it was designed. And Apple actually reserved half of those, the first half of those, so you could only have font numbers going from 128 to 255, and 128 possible font IDs for basically for everybody but Apple to use, which was not really scalable. They changed this around the time that the Mac Plus came out by adding the font resource, which basically expands the number of font numbers, available font numbers, to 32K. So 33,786 or something like that. It was still possible to have conflicts. If you had a conflict, either on the earlier system or on the later system, when you moved fonts around, the system would automatically renumber them. But this created problems because if you shared a document with somebody else who was trying to use the same font but didn't have the same font number, it wouldn't show the right font. So I've actually used some illegal font numbers on some of these. This is 66, 58. Anyway, when you open up a font here, you now see a nicely resizable window. You still can't do more than 255 characters, but you do have this more informative view here. Right now it's showing the key that you press to get the character. So like for these accented characters, it's like Option E followed by A, or Shift Option C, or Option 7, Option S. You can also still look at the system view if you want. if you haven't created any characters yet and you're not sure which characters are which. But you can also display the decimal code points for the characters. So these are like if you need to know the ASCII code for these characters. You can also display it in octal or hex. You can also view the offset, which is like the left side bearing, or the width of the character. Let's look at some other fonts here. So the other thing that's interesting is you can actually open more than one font at a time. So I just opened a font, now I just opened another font, and there's a window menu here, and I can switch between them. It also has, lets you zoom this to the largest window possible within the screen, which is a new feature in, I think, System 6. So the tools in the edit window here are pretty much the same as in FONTastic, except there's a new icon here which controls the layers. You can actually do three different layers. If I switch to the background layer, you can say, draw, say some, like say a sort of a template. Let's say you want to make a bunch of characters that are the same size. You can put that in the background and use it as a guide. I think this only, it only shows up. It's different for each character. It also has another layer here that I guess is the guidelines layer, but it doesn't seem to be able to do anything. Clicking in the window doesn't do anything. You can't use any of these other tools. There's no menu items that apply to it that I can figure out. One of the reasons I don't know how this works is because I no longer have the manual for FONTastic Plus, and I haven't been able to find one, either in actual print version or a PDF or anything like that. I actually contacted Jim Von Air, the founder of AltSys and the creator of FONTastic, and asked him what this was, and he doesn't remember either. And he also doesn't have a copy of the manual, sadly. They've also made a couple other changes here. Let's get back to the font view, bitmap view. They took away these little controls for changing the horizontal and vertical metrics. Now they have this tool for setting the width. All it does is set the width. So all you can do is move this right one back and forth. They added the ability too to create zero width characters. So like if you wanted to create accents or something like that to go over other characters, or if you wanted to, I don't know, there's special cases like in some, let's say you wanted to create a font where the letters could appear inside a box. You could make a box character that was zero width, and then the rest of the characters would be designed with the same width, but they would just overlap with the box, and that way you could put a box around a letter. First type a box, and then type the letter, and it would appear in the box and move the cursor to the next position. That's just one example. The other thing is you can't control the vertical metrics with this tool. Instead, you have to go to the font attributes and type in numbers here. So if you want to change the baseline, you actually have to change both the ascent and descent. Like if you wanted to move it up 1 pixel, you would change this to 23 and this to 7. You can also control the leading here. The other thing is that I don't think I even showed in FONTastic, but when you selected a character or part of a character like this, all you could do is copy and paste. If you tried to drag it around like this, it wouldn't work. It didn't do anything. It would just change the make a new selection like this. So this is a new feature in FONTastic Plus. You can grab parts of characters and drag them around. And I'll show a little bit more of that in a minute. The rest of the tools here are basically the same. Oh, they added a ellipse tool, which draws ellipses. You can't do them in different colors, just like in FONTastic, but anyway, it is what it is. So I'm going to actually create a new font here. Notice I don't have to close everything to do this. So I'm going to call this, I'll just call it condensed. Okay. Oh, so now I need to do a new font. That's right. I made a new file. Now I'm making a new font. So we're going to start with size 12. I actually want to base this font on some Mac Paint artwork that I did. So let's switch back to Mac Paint here. So we notice I have this condensed font here. And what we can do is select some characters that I've drawn. I drew these back in the 80s. And I'll copy this and then switch back to FONTastic Plus. And I'm going to put this in. Let's see, I wonder, let's go back and look at that for a second. I'm going to go into Fat Bits mode here. And let's see how many pixels tall this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So we need this to be at least 19 pixels tall with a little bit of headroom. So let's say 3 on the top, that would be 22. So ascent of 22, and let's say a descent of 4. So go back to FONTastic Plus here, and I'm going to change the font attributes, and we'll make this 22 and 4. That's better. Now if we do paste, we've just pasted this artwork into this character. So it looks like I hit the baseline, luckily. I'm in the A, so let's move this over so that the A is sitting there. And then we'll change the width like that. And if we open a sample window here, it's kind of a mess. So the A is basically overlapping all these other characters because we've got the pixels go way over to the right past the width of the character. But we can fix that. We'll just copy the B here. I'll actually cut this and go to the letter B and paste it. And then let's move this into position. Set the side bearing and go back to the A. And let's select the C. Type the capital C, paste, move it into position. Go back to the A, select the D, cut, type a D, paste, slide this into position. Back to the A, cut. And it's starting to look like something down here. Let's see. Let's get rid of this F. There's a shortcut here. If I hold on the Option key, it switches to the grabber hand. Almost done. No keyboard shortcuts to select other tools though, unfortunately. That'd be handy. I'm actually going to select both of these and cut. Go to the I, paste, drag it into place, set the side bearing. Should have been doing this before. Cut, go to the J, paste, and position it. And there. Now we have, let's see, it doesn't seem like it's updated yet. Oh, there it goes. So now we have your basic font here. Just to show you some things you can do here, like let's say you wanted to make lowercase letters. I can go to, like, say the D, and looks like maybe the start of a lowercase b here. So we could select this, copy it, and go to the B, paste it, move it into position, and then change our side bearing. So you notice it's now kind of in the, oops, there we go, the B position. So we can use the eraser tool here to get, let's make a very high X height. And there's our B. How's that look? Looks pretty good. Now, one thing you couldn't do with FONTastic is we can now copy this and go to the D and do paste, move it into position here, set the width, and then do horizontal flip. And there we go. Now we've got a B and a D. And we could do the same thing if we go to the P and paste, move it in position. We can do flip vertical and put this into position, set the width, and there we go. Now we got the P. We got to start on the lowercase. Let's go to the Q, paste, And here we can just do flip horizontal, flip vertical, or actually could have just used the rotate command too. That would, oops. So if you pasted, you could do rotate, rotate, and then move it in position. And there we go. Oops. Oh, I put this into the capital Q. Cut. Go to the lowercase q and paste. There we go. That's better. So you get the idea. And then if we want to save this, let's call this, see it's in the file condensed up here, so let's just call this condensed. And actually I'm going to change the size to say 24 point. And right now it's saying font ID 200. Let's see, will it let us use this? Yeah. 200 is actually the default that FONTastic and FONTastic Plus use. So now if we close this, we can see our font right there. And now we can, if we wanted to, finish this, and then we can install it and use it in MacWrite or whatever. So FONTastic Plus added a few features, like you can make much larger fonts than you could make with FONTastic. It also, as I mentioned, supports font resources, and also nfont, which is NFNT, which added the ability to have grayscale and color fonts, although it can't do any of that in FONTastic. It will open them, and it can save them in that format. I think it helps with the font ID and font number limits. It won't run on a 128K Mac. You have to have at least a Mac Plus to run FONTastic Plus and System 3.0 or later. Amazingly, FONTastic Plus will run on any version of the classic Mac OS, all the way up to version 9.2.2. It will even run on PowerPC Macs. It'll run in larger screens, which is great, because as you can see, this Mac Plus screen is pretty cramped. Most of the time that I use this program, actually, I had a larger screen. It will also work on color screens, including 24-bit color screens. So it's pretty cool. You can run this in modern Mac, classic Mac emulators, running pretty much any version of the classic Mac OS except for the really earliest ones. It originally retailed for $79.95, $30 upgrade from FONTastic. So I made a bunch of fonts with these programs, hoping to market them somehow. I even registered a company name with the state of Minnesota called Great Northern Software. Never ended up doing anything with it. And I even did preliminary sketches for a package design. I guess I was going to sell this at retail stores, maybe at Egghead or Software Etc. or something like that, or maybe by mail order. Just stick a floppy disk in a box and retail it, I guess. Instead, I started making PostScript fonts, which turned out to be a smart move. Probably the most famous user of FONTastic and FONTastic Plus was Zuzana Lichko, who designed all those cool fonts for Emigre magazine in the 90s. Her earliest fonts were bitmap fonts that were made with Apple's Font Editor 2.0 and FONTastic and FONTastic Plus. As I mentioned, for some reason I no longer have the manual for FONTastic Plus. I don't know what happened to it. I still have my manuals for FONTastic, but not FONTastic Plus. The it looked something like this, only smaller. This is actually the flyer for FONTastic Plus, which I still have. When I contacted Jim Von Air, I asked him about that too, and he didn't have a copy of the manual either. All he had was an empty box, unfortunately. And he checked with his former colleagues from AltSys, and none of them have it either. So I'd love to find one, even a PDF or anything. So if you happen to see this and happen to have one, please get in touch with me. I'd love to talk to you about it, see if maybe I can get a copy or something. And that's about it. So that's FONTastic and FONTastic Plus. See you next time.